Hey guys, Daryl Sweeney here. Wanted to pick up where we left off last week. I was surprised and really excited by the response to last week's topic. It seemed that a lot of people were really excited by the idea of borrowed audiences and the have on their business. So I got a lot of comments, a lot of questions came flooding in. So I thought it made a lot of sense just to pick up where we left off and dig a little bit deeper into this topic. So one of the things I want to ask you is when you think about borrowed audiences, and again, we define borrowed audiences as audiences that we didn't build ourselves, right? So audiences that already exist somewhere out there, whether it be in another club, whether it be in another organization, an association, a blog audience, a podcast audience, some audience that's not yours. When you think about borrowed audiences, what is a place in your business that you may already be using them? Right? And maybe you don't think about it. And here's why this came to mind. I was talking to a client this week and we were talking about growth. We were talking about how to get the idea of what him and his team does in front of more people. And this idea of borrowed audiences came up. He had watched the video and he said, what does that look like in my business? Here's what's fascinating. He was already doing it. So on one part of his business, he had borrowed audiences, and that was recruiting. Right? So him and his team would constantly go out to colleges and universities and provide value, talk to students. And students were a big part of the people they were trying to bring into the organization. So it was a great place for them. They were borrowing the audiences that these universities, these colleges had put together to build his business, to bring graduates into his business, right? He could go out and find those students on their own, but it made a lot more sense for him to go there. So ironically, we start talking about, well, how do you do the same thing you're doing on the recruiting side, on the sales and marketing side? So logical, right? Now, when we talk about borrowed audiences, so that's my question for you. Is there a place, in what place in your business are you already borrowing audiences? And what can you learn from that? What can you take from that experience and maybe apply to some of the other goals you have, perhaps around sales, perhaps around marketing or recruiting, right? So when we think about borrowed audiences, the question that kept coming up is, well, I love the idea of borrowed audiences. I love the idea of getting in front of people, but how do I do it? How do I even start that conversation? How do I make the approach? So I just want to take a few minutes and provide some value around that, give you some ideas to think and reflect on around how do you even start that process? So I'm going to give you 4 things that are going to walk us into how to go from, I like the idea of borrowed audience, but I have no idea how to do it, to being in front of those audiences, growing your business and taking things to the next level. So number 1, you got to define who you want to be in front of. So many people I talk to just say, well, people, I want to be in front of more people, more people, more people. But who are they? What is your ideal client? What does that persona look like? Right? What do they do? How much money do they make? Where do they live? What do they like? Right? To really understand the people that you and your business can best serve, take the time to understand what those audiences are. And it may be more than one thing, right? So this doesn't mean we have to group everybody together, right? Maybe you have an audience that is, highly educated, but maybe you have a different set of services that would really appeal to people who are not college graduates. Well, separate those audiences because they may be hanging out in different places. They may be doing different things. But step 1 is really defining those audiences that will start to speak to who you want to go out and find, right? And once you identify those audiences, let's figure out what they do, right? So in my business, look, I am a professional coach. I'm a business coach who works with leaders. I work with entrepreneurs and I work with ambitious professionals who want to take their business, their career, and their lives to the next level, who wants to build the things they really want and chase those visions. So if I'm asking where those people are and where do they hang out, where are the entrepreneurs in our town, right? What are they reading? What are they watching? What social media groups are they drawn to? What videos are they paying attention to? What events are they going to? Where are they and what are they doing? And by answering that question, you're going to get a sense of, well, wherever those places are, that's probably an audience that I want to be in front of, that I want my business and what I do exposed to. Right? So step 1 is define the audiences you want to be in front of. Step 2 is to really understand, what are they doing? Where are they going? What are they consuming? Right? And once you figure out what they're doing, where they're going, and what they're consuming, figure out who's in charge, right? Who runs that group? If it's a social media group, who's running the group? If it's an event, who's putting on the event? If it's a blog, who writes the blog? Right? If it's a seminar, if it's an association, who is your point of contact? Who are the people responsible? Basically, who owns the audience? Right? And this is going to be important because we're not just going into these various places and kind of bombing and throwing up our stuff all over everything. We want to go and do it the right way. We want to create a partnership. We want to provide value. And in return, hopefully receive some value from these opportunities. So it's going to be really important to find out who is that contact. And once we understand who owns the audience, step 4 is where it really gets interesting. That's where we make our strategic approach. Now, I wanted to spend a little bit of time on this because when I say our strategic approach, what I don't recommend is you send somebody an email that goes something like this. And I bring this up because I've seen them. Hey, I see that you've developed a really nice audience on YouTube and you invite guests on for the videos you shoot. I would love to be a guest. Let me know. Or I see you have a lot of people following your blog and reading your blog. I would love to write an article for the blog. Let me know how to make that happen. Or how can, I want to be a guest on your podcast, right? That doesn't make any sense. Right? Why would someone book you? What is it about you that is going to provide value for them? Basically, what's in it for them? And we have to answer that question. And I think the time to answer that question is not after you get in the conversation, especially if it's a cold conversation, but before. So with each of these audiences that are valuable to you, take some time to do some research. Understand if it's a podcast, what's the topic? What are they talking about? Right? And listen to a few episodes, understand the flow. Look for things that may be gaps. Look for the gaps that exist where you're like, man, there's a content gap here and I could provide a ton of value, right? I could help lift up the host of the podcast as a subject matter expert by also bringing in my unique spin or my unique take or my unique lane and add value to this audience to further the owner's mission, right? And identify that. So when you make your approach, instead of just asking to be a guest, tell them that you've listened. Tell them what you like. Tell them about what you noticed. And that's that content gap. What did you notice about what they're doing that would be really valuable if they added it, if their audience was exposed to it? And then tell them how you can help expose their audience to it. And then you suggest joining them for a podcast. How open would they be to having you as a guest? How open would they be in having a conversation around partnering together? Right? So those are our 4 steps to get in front of these new audiences. Define your target audience. Identify where they are, what they do, what they consume. Determine who owns the audience. And lastly, make your strategic approach. A little bit of research will get you a lot more yeses when it comes to actually creating opportunities to get in front of that audience. So hopefully this video was valuable for you guys. Hopefully this kind of takes last week's idea of borrowing an audience to the next level and actually walks you into ways to do that. If this is something you're interested in and you still have questions, hit up the comments. Reach out to me either on this platform. You can hit me at my website over at darylsweeney.com. But more than anything, get out there, get your message, your mission, your business, and yourself out in front of more people. And let's make 2021 the year that it absolutely can be. Talk to you guys next week.